Hello, assalamualaikum. Kumusta na po? Magandang araw sa lahat. Good day to everyone. Kumusta na po kayo? Konting lambing lang po mga kababayan, ano. Pa-subscribe naman po dito sa ating munting channel, Zayan Vlog TV, para po tuloy-tuloy ang ating paghahatid ng mga balita mula sa iba't ibang panig ng mundo, ano. Kahit sa paraan lang ng pagsishare nito ay malaman ng sambayan ng Pilipino kung ano na ba ang kaganapan sa iba't ibang panig ng mundo. Katulad na limbawa nitong pangyayari sa China, no. Sa ngayon po mga kababayan ay ultimo mga nursing po sa hospital sa China ay talaga nag-iyakan na po sapagkat 15 hours silang pinag-duty ng tuloy-tuloy. So sa sobrang lala po ng kanilang kalagayan. Panoorin po natin mga kababayan itong balitang ito.
A video shows nurses at the Third People's Hospital of Datong City, Shaanxi Province on January 4th. They were crying and complaining that not only had the medical staff gotten sick and been overworked for at least 15 hours a day, but they didn't even get paid. As the economic downturn continues, nurses are protesting in many places. Guangxi and Jiangsu have reported that nurses protest because of their salary. The nurse said, "We worked for at least 15 hours a day. As soon as patients were admitted into the hospital, we've immediately attended to them for 2 or 3 hours. We felt distressed when we saw the grandparents, you know? We tried to help them as much as possible. During the pandemic, I was in my 20s, and I actually dealt with crematoriums many times." She also cried, saying that the hospital's administration can't treat nurses like they were doing. They felt heartbroken. She said the nurses would never think of backing down and weren't afraid of the pandemic. According to the speaker, nurses must use oxygen when intubating patients. In addition, she said nurses were dealing with physical tolerance and pain. For instance, in one case, both sides of a nurse's thyroid gland was full of cysts, but she didn't complain. Instead, she said nurses just wanted to work and get paid. According to Chinese language media outlet Xintang Ren, the video may have been recorded in a hospital conference room. A citizen commented that the humble man's mindset was a productive mineral source before it was used. He said it would be slag once it was used up. The cry of the Datong nurse resonated with many nurses online. Another citizen commented that she resigned before the Spring Festival. She said nurses were tired, distressed, and couldn't listen anymore. After China lifted its zero-COVID policy in December last year, COVID is now spreading unchecked everywhere. As a result, China has come under fire from the World Health Organization and the U.S. for allegedly underestimating the severity of its current outbreak as reports of overcrowded hospitals and funeral homes pour in. A video uploaded on January 7th shows that the #1 funeral home in Baichen District, Tianjin City, was being expanded. At least 3 cranes and dozens of workers were working on the site. A resident living in Tianjin, who wishes to remain anonymous, told Voice of America on January 7th that the #3 funeral home in Tianjin now cremates more than 200 corpses daily, up from an earlier average of 40. Friends who work in Tianjin funeral homes estimate that at least 100,000 people have died in Tianjin since December 12th and that the death rate has not yet reached its peak. Another video took place at the Tianhe Yuan funeral home in Harbin City, Heilongjiang Province, on January 11th. More than 100 workers were working to build a shed to store the corpses. Estimates are that there are more than 20 sheds in total. Mr. Lin, a citizen of Harbin, had a phone interview with the news outlet.
我父亲当时就住院的时候被感染了，大夫告诉我马上办理出院，说医护工作者已经都染了，是挺严重的。我父亲去世上个月的21号，我父亲是离休老干部，他举行了告别仪式，其他很多就是很快的，都得排队，得预约，还得有的托关系，连棺材都等价了，成倍涨，棺材铺24小时不停，涨了好多翻倍了。
The number of COVID-infected patients soared, creating a shortage of medical supplies. The rising death toll also overwhelmed the crematorium and funeral home industry. According to the New York Times, the outbreak worsened because the population lacked immunity, and they have not been exposed to the virus due to the strict lockdown policies of past years. The global tourism industry has pined for a return of Chinese tourists. However, countries are now choosing whether to participate in the great reopening immediately or wait and see how the risks of a new COVID wave play out. Rainyi Hamdi, a business writer, said Southeast Asia needs Chinese travelers for its post-pandemic economic recovery, but staying open to China is a massive gamble with equally significant returns. According to ASEAN Statistics Division, in 2019, the region received around 32 million Chinese visitors, or 23% of its total arrivals. By 2020, the region received only a fraction of what it used to get in 2019. Southeast Asia needs Chinese travelers desperately for its economic recovery. But there could be unintended consequences due to exposure to COVID infection. Western politicians and health experts argue that millions of Chinese increase the risk of another variant emerging. Every country is weighing up the potential economic gains against the possibility of offending China. However, due to entry restrictions in various countries, Beijing has warned it would apply countermeasures based on reciprocity. Why is the future of Hong Kong athletes in danger? Because the island's authorities, now under the rule of the Chinese regime, are threatening to withdraw funding if Hong Kong sports associations do not include China in their official names. In addition to the risk of losing funding, the rights of athletes to represent Hong Kong would be at stake if the directive is not followed. As the Hong Kong Free Press reported, the Hong Kong Sports Federation and the Hong Kong Olympic Committee told AFP on Friday, January 13th, that sports bodies have until July 1st to complete the name change. Fewer than 20 of the 83 Hong Kong sports organizations listed on the Olympic Committee's website reportedly have China in their names. There is the Hong Kong Chinese Swimming Association, for example, but the Island Soccer Association currently does not reference China. The city's Olympic Committee controls who can represent Hong Kong as events such as the Asian Games and the Olympics, and is headed by pro-Beijing former lawmaker Timothy Falk. Hong Kong is considered a Chinese-administered region but competes separately in international sports, including at the Olympics. The island's ability to compete on its own has long been a source of local pride. But since the enforcement of the national security law imposed by the Chinese regime in 2020 and endless communist propaganda with it, Hong Kongers have been forced to suppress their democratic identity. Let us recall that this law was passed a year after mass pro-democracy demonstrations began in Hong Kong. Protests were brutally repressed by order of Beijing. Since then, the Chinese Communist Party has strengthened its control over Hong Kong and has prioritized forcing its communist concept of patriotism on the island. But Hong Kong authorities are increasingly concerned about symbolism in sporting events. Situations during some competitions highlight the citizens' rejection of communism. For example, overseas sports organizers accidentally played the pro-democracy protest song Glory to Hong Kong during flag-raising ceremonies. The anger of the island's pro-Beijing government was such that it even tried to pressure Google to make the song disappear from search results. Why is now the eye on sports? Tobias Zuzer, a professor at the Chinese University of Hong Kong who studies sports and culture, said that for Hong Kongers, sports have become a platform for political expression. So the directive of the name change is intended to reinforce the sense of national identity toward China. He told the Washington Post, "At a soccer match, 10,000 people will chant Hong Kong, Hong Kong, Hong Kong, and that would not happen anywhere else any more than inside the stadium." Tobias Zuzer, professor at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Undoubtedly for pro-democracy Hong Kongers, cheering on the team is the last chance to express local pride and express their discontent with the communist regime that curtailed their freedoms. During his visit to Africa on January 11th, China's new foreign minister, Qin Gang, vowed to strengthen the representation and right to speak for African countries at the UN Security Council and other international organizations, which is clearly trying to win the heart of Africa. Unexpectedly, Faki, chairman of the African Union, directly responded that what is important for Africa is that the CCP allows Africa to have a permanent seat on the UN Security Council. According to media reports, after taking office last month, China's new foreign minister, Qin Gang, traveled to Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia, where the African Union is located. This is also the first stop of his 5-country trip to Africa. According to AP, Qin Gang attended the inauguration ceremony of the Chinese-built headquarters of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention on January 11th and stated that Beijing supports the African Union's greater representation and voice at the UN Security Council and other international organizations. He added that Africa is not an arena for competition between China and the US. Unexpectedly, Qin Gang's speech was countered by the statement of the chairman of the African Union, Moussa Faki Mahamat, who was also present at the event. Faki said that many categories on the UN Security Council's agenda concern African countries, but the Security Council does not grant permanent African representation. The exclusion of the African continent from international governance is unjust and needs to be addressed urgently. It is unacceptable that others decide in the place of others. It is not fair. We need a new order at the international level that will represent the interests of others, he said. However, in reality, among the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, the US, France, the UK, and Russia all support expanding the permanent membership of the Security Council, including a chair for Africa. Only the CCP declares that the Security Council needs to be reformed but refuses to publicly support any country becoming a new permanent member, nor is it willing to participate actively in substantive discussions on expanding the Security Council.
Muli po mga kababayan, sama-sama po nating ipagdasal, ipanalangin na naway makahanap ng gamot ang bansang China at ang sa ganon ay mapigil na po nila ang pananalasan ng virus sa kanilang bansa at wag na itong makahawa pa ng ibang nasyon, Bagamat alam naman natin kung gaano kasama ang pamunuan ng CCP, Communist Party ng China, ay tao pa rin sila at ang pinakamasakit na nabibiktima diyan ay yung mga kanilang mamamayan, lalong-lalo na po ang mga bata at mga matatanda.